What is up, Big Ten backers? We are back for another week of college football, baby. How y'all doing? We are back for Matt Does Vegas. It's the best college football betting show there is out there. We also got a special surprise again, back for a third week in a row, right, Scott?
Yes, it is. Happy to be here, too. It's always fun.
It's great having you. We're going to get some Ducks inside information, but first, we have to get to our little preview. So let me get that all chalked up for everyone, and you get to get a little coach's perspective. So here we go.
Let's go, let's Purdue sucks. But so does Michigan in Ohio State.
Love you, man. I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now. This is a tough team right here. We're proud to be from Ohio, and it's always been Ohio against the world.
Who taught you how to fight? Who taught you how to be a warrior?
I hate playing against these guys. I hate playing them.
Like, you're making me uncomfortable. Like, I don't.
You better get me right now.
They're fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins. Right? This game ain't going to be played in Hollywood.
We're in LA. It's us and USC.
We are at the top of the Big Ten conference. I mean, we're at the top of any conference. I don't ever look at ourselves below anybody. We are
best there is, plain and simple. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I piss excellence.
Sure, you get some of that NIL money that he's sharing with Dan Lanning, but sure you get.
There's some things going on that aren't right as well, so we'll talk about how to handle it.
Really, 2 or 3 beers or 4. I've probably done that 1,000 times in my life.
I'm a man. I'm 40.
Love you, man.
Oh, man, that brings me back some memories from this week. Sherrod Moore signed a contract, which he should have already signed, which is kind of awkward. Anyway, it's official now. And guess what? Nebraska got him while he could. Matt Rule with the win, baby. The Rule Aid is going down smooth. So, boys, we got to get to what's going on this week. We're going to do a little bit of a different setup, as you're all used to if you're a Big Ten backer. We're going to do the Matt Does Vegas mixed in a little bit with our preview. So first up, we got the Midwest CornFest game of the week, and it just happens to be in Oregon? That doesn't sound very CornFest, but we will go ahead and make that happen. These topics came up last year, by the way, so Oregon, you got to start stepping up your corn production, so get with it. Boom. Here we go. We got the Civil War, baby. It's going on. What do you got on this, Scott?
You know, this is going to be an interesting matchup. Last time Oregon went to Oregon State, they had a big lead in the fourth quarter, and Oregon State ran it some god-awful number like 21 times in a row for 180 yards and just kept pounding it. They threw like 6 passes in the game and ended up coming back to win. And, you know, Oregon won last year, but with the struggles that Oregon's had on offensive line the first couple of weeks, this one, you know, it started as a 14-point spread. It went up to 16, I think. It's right around 16 now. But I don't know how many people are picking Oregon to cover the spread this week just because, yeah, they looked better in the second half last week with some adjustments to their line rotation. But, you know, until they show that they can come out ready from the beginning and kind of dominate the line of scrimmage like they should have been, you know, you're going to see some close games. I have it as a closer game, like an 11-point game, maybe 10.
Okay.
I don't have them covering the spread.
All right. Well, this one's a little different. You know, the Civil War, every year, it's bitter. But this one has a little bit extra juice to it this year. Matt, we were talking about this a little bit earlier today. You had a question specifically for Scott about the juice in this game. Man, oh man, it's going to be a big one. So, Matt, what is it that you wanted to ask him?
Yeah, thank you all. And just, you know, living up here in the Pacific Northwest, Civil War is a pretty intense rivalry given everything that's happened with the Pac-12 and the disintegration of it. Do you really feel like Oregon, given the last 2 games, is really going to be running into an emotional bear trap here? This is Oregon State's season. It's not Oregon's. So what's your thoughts around the emotion around this game?
It's funny. I had an exchange with the Beaver's Edge writer and publisher who covers the Beavers for Rivals.com. And we were talking about that, and he said it's funny when you listen to the players and coaches this week for Oregon, they're all talking about how personal it is and how important this game is. And the Oregon State guys have been pretty careful not to say anything about the importance of it. I think that's a little bit of window dressing. They care. They care because they care. They got left behind a little bit, and I hate the term, but they really did get left behind with the Conference realignment. And I know that there's a lot of frustration at their level because of that. And I think they're going to come out with some extra juice. They're playing at home. They're going to be amped up. It's going to be a sellout crowd. It's, against a top 10 team, and they're going to want to – it's still going to be the opportunity to ruin a season for them like it's always been, and that matters in this state. This state, it's – and I'll tell the people a story that's funny. When I met my wife, the very first question I asked her was ducks or beavers. That is a real thing. And she answered correctly. But that is a real thing, and people care about this game here, and it is, Bryce Betting.
Unlike – I gotta stop you there. Unlike Cristobal, you went down on a knee, right? You were able to take that knee.
When I asked her to marry me, yes, I did go down on my knee. I did. I should have taught Mario that. I should have said, "Hey, this is a knee. I know you used it when you proposed, so you can use it during a game too."
The story is he did not. He had his best man get down on the knee, and then he fumbled the ring, and it was a long story from there.
Well, and then he hired somebody to be his ring bearer during the. Asking, he had to hire somebody to say, "Hey, tell me when I'm supposed to get the ring." And
when do I go down? When do I take the knee? Oh man, that could get deep. Anyway, let's get back to the game. So, it was a big differential, like the under/over, right, or the point spread. Sorry, Matt. Vegas, Matt. What do you got for the point spread here?
No, it's pretty spot on. It currently sitting around 16.5 though, but I will say I saw a lot of books opening this at 20.5. So you've actually seen a drop over the week about 4 points. You've seen that over under stay consistent. It started about 50.5, jump up a little to 51. And I really see that being the case. Just Oregon has the ability to score at will, so you're always going to have to be tempted with the over there. But the surprising factor, to your point, Scott, was the fact that you're seeing that spread really only being 16.5. And if you just looked at these two rosters on paper, they're not even closely comparable. So really interesting spread.
Hey, don't you have a little read off that you have to do before you start talking about betting?
Yeah, that's a housekeeping segment later on. So
okay, all right, we'll get there.
Yeah.
So anyway, this game really boils down to me. It's like the quintessential big brother, little brother thing. But this time, like, the extra juice is that big brother just graduated high school. He got that car for graduation, and little brother's been riding around shotgun all summer long. Well, guess what? Big brother's taking that brand new car, and he's going off to bigger and better things in the Big Ten. And guess what? Little brother's left at home with mommy and daddy and a lot less money.
Very true. And if I had, if the staff does what I would do after watching the second half, which was, listen, you got to walk on at center starting last 2 weeks, and then your freshman All-American center over at guard because of injuries at the right guard position. When they brought Nishad Strother in and moved Pancho Lalaulu back over to center, the game changed. And I think they just need to start that way. It was clearly a better lineup, and if you need to bring in Pickard to spell, you bring him in to spell, but he was getting blown off the ball by Boise State. He was just getting shoved back into the backfield. And you can't have that with a center. It sets the tone for the rest of the line, and they played a lot better when they brought in Strother. So, if they do what they should be able to do and they can get a consistent running game, which has been a bugaboo, the only one that's really produced anything in the running game is Jordan James, who's averaging around 6 point something per carry. You can get a consistent running game with Noah Whittington and maybe get a third running back in there to spell them. They should be able to control this game like they did a year ago. If you can't get that running game consistently and you keep making drive-killing penalties at the beginning, holding on first down, illegal...
Getting behind the sticks.
Yeah. You get behind the sticks, and then you're giving a fired-up defense in front of an amped-up crowd an opportunity to make plays, and that is when you run into trouble. So they've got to eliminate those self-inflicted wounds. If they do that, they should be able to roll. If they can't do that, it's going to be another Boise State-type game. It's going to be another close one.
And that's the conflicting viewpoint that I see here, because you have those close games the first 2 games of the season, week 1, week 2. You know, you chalk week 1 up to it's week 1. Week 2, it's a little bit of a trend. But week 3, this is rivalry week. It could be close, and that would be normal. You know, as long as you squeak away that win, that's okay.
That is, and it is a rivalry, and the people do care. Bryce Betcher, who plays baseball also, has got a lot of time at linebacker last year and this year, and he is from Oregon, and he knows what this rivalry means. Unlike, you know, most of these guys are not from Oregon, right? They're from all over the country. Jordan James is from Georgia. Marcus Harper's from Illinois. You got all these people from all over the country. This game matters in this state, and Bryce Betcher knows it better than anyone, and he's still frustrated by the 2022 game because they kept running it right down the middle, and Oregon kept collapsing and not stopping the run. So they care, and I'm going to be interested to see if they can come out with a fire and intensity to start the game on both sides of the ball.
Hey, we're going to make some bets on this. We're going to call it. So before we do, is there any injuries going on that you know of? Anyone held out from this game?
Nobody other than that has been held out. There's a chance that Bedford is back for this game. He's been, he was on the field last week in full pads warming up, but he looked a little bit off still. Reports are that he was at practice taking reps in drills, so he may be back. I'm not sure. There's no additional new injuries that I know of that would negatively impact the score.
So no load management this game.
I wouldn't put load management in this game. This is not the game to load manage. This is a game you go to win.
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta beat the in-state rivals, and you gotta establish that dominance right now. I know how rivalries are. And,
absolutely, yeah.
Whew, there's gonna be a new one in the Big Ten with Washington. Before we get there, Matt, you want to start that? We start making our picks.
Yeah, let's start making them.
Are you gonna do Vegas?
We'll get into that a little bit later on. We want to be respectful of Scott's time here, so I'll just kind of jump right into it. I think Oregon right now, just with what they have on paper, despite it whether it's a close game or not, I think the safe play here is the over. You know, the paper tells me they should win this game by 5-6 touchdowns. The reality is it's on the road. It's a rivalry game, so I like to play it safe in those situations. I would just go over. How about you?
What do we got for the over under?
We have it at 51 currently. Is the over under?
51 even, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's tough.
My score prediction had the over. Just so you know, my score prediction had the over. I had 35-21.
Yeah. What's the it's 16.5? Is that what you said?
16.5 is what I'm seeing at most sports books at this moment. Yeah.
Currently.
Yes.
Give me the Beavers to cover the spread.
Wow. All right, man. That's gutsy.
I think Oregon wins, but hey, it's
too.
been close.
Yeah, it has been. And I am just curious, Scott, what, you know, again, being a rivalry game, nobody's going to be shocked if this is a one-score win by Oregon, right? You win, just get out of there, move on. But that would basically give you 3 straight weeks of underperforming in terms of what you think the score should be and the spread should be. Do you think that will cause any nervousness among Oregon?
The Oregon fans are already nervous because of the 2 first games. So
sure.
I think it would actually not cause as much as the first 2 games caused. I think most people, again, if you looked at it on paper before the season, this should be, you know, a 56-10 type game. It really should be based on the roster. I mean, Oregon State got gutted in the offseason with the departures, and that was tough. But it's not on paper. We don't play this on paper. So I think, would anybody be surprised if it was one-score game? No. Would it cause a lot of extra concern? Probably not, unless the offensive line is getting torched again. If the reconstituted offensive line gets torched again, then that's going to cause a lot different kind of anguish, because that you can't go into Big Ten play with an offensive line that can't stop FCS level teams. And while Oregon State's not FCS, they're more G5 right now because of the roster talent. You shouldn't be getting dominated at the line of scrimmage at this point.
I'd agree. Yep.
Andrew Anderson, we have a little grudge match with him. He runs a SEC type podcast, so he said we're biased for the Big Ten.
Yes,
of course we are. Damn right we are.
It's a Big Ten podcast. What are you supposed to do?
Wait till we get to that South Carolina LSU prediction, brother.
Ooh.
All right, so we got to move right along. We're staying out west. We got our West Coast boys on here, so let's bring it to the Apple Cup, baby. Much the same, there's kind of that same animosity for everyone. Big brother, little brother type thing. One moved on, one stayed at home. So what do we got here? You got any interaction with... Oh, actually, let's start with you, Matt. You were at the game last week, the Washington game, right?
Yes, I was. Washington versus Eastern Michigan. And that was absolutely atrocious. I got to say right now, the first fact is, I'll start with the stat that is most mind-boggling to me is first two games the Huskies have played this year. They played Weber State and they played Eastern Michigan, 0 points in the first quarter against vastly inferior opponents at home. This offense looks like it has no idea what it's doing. And just watching from last year, having watched several games live last year, we all saw that they were a national championship caliber team. To this year, it is abundantly clear how many athletes have transitioned or moved on. They just do not have the same type of players this year that they had last year. But with that being said, whatever I just said about Washington, you can take and expand on with Washington State, unfortunately. They had some parts last year. Obviously, Cam Ward was back there. They just do not have the players to really hang with anybody decent this year. So I see this being a very sloppy, very ugly game. For all those that aren't aware, this is being played at Lumen Field where the Seahawks play, so it is not being played at Husky Stadium, albeit in the city of Seattle. And I think you're really seeing those mediocre numbers kind of with the spread where it started at -8.5, and you've seen that drop to -5 in favor of Washington. Again, on paper, they're not even comparable, these two squads, but either Washington doesn't have the talent they had last year or just not putting it together. This is another one of the tricky ones.
It's interesting you're calling both those teams trash because Lumen actually is the name for the hole that everything goes through your digestive tract. So both of them playing like shit. Maybe they are shit.
You're right, by the way. Washington got gutted as well when Kalen DeBoer left.
There you go.
I think I read somewhere 20 of the top 22 of the starting 22 left or moved on. That's insane. And it's, when Jed Fish came in, he thought he was bringing in, Tedroy McMillan, and he thought he was bringing in Fafita, and he thought he was bringing in a lot of his Arizona talent, and they didn't come with him. And now he got stuck with a subpar roster. And it's unfair to say that because it sounds like it's an Oregon guy trashing Washington, but the reality is their roster got gutted and they weren't able to replace it. I know they were excited about the quarterback, but I watched him play last year at Mississippi State, and I was not impressed with his arm strength. I know he seems to have lost something after that arm injury he had. He just didn't have the zip back now. I haven't seen him this year. I don't know how well he's adjusted this year, but he was not what I thought he would be last year. And so I wouldn't have been excited about him because when I watched him play at Mississippi State, his arm strength was, he was missing throws to the flat, screen passes to the flat. He was just missing stuff in the ground. And maybe that was just the arm not being fully recovered and they rushed him back. I'm not sure.
No, it's good insight. You're seeing it too.
But
it was missed throws. It was misreads. It was very obvious he'd hesitate with that throw a couple times when he should have hit that receiver. Just doesn't look comfortable in the system and doesn't look like he has the talent to overcompensate that lack of full playbook knowledge at this time.
He's a Mike Leach quarterback. He's a Mike Leach quarterback, and that's what he can't do without that system.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Pete Carroll's son has led these Huskies in defense, not allowing a touchdown all year. But the Cougs, I think, will probably be the best competition Washington's faced so far this season. And they're starting a new quarterback thanks to Cam Ward's departure on the other side, John Mater. This Huskies defense has the opportunity to kind of take over this game.
They do, but again, the offense isn't moving the ball, and I think you can continue to take everything Scott was saying with the rivalry down in Oregon, and it's the same philosophy up here. You're just changing the name of the state. Washington State is furious over the dissolution of the Pac-12. It's causing a lot of hardship, a lot of issues. They're trying to rekindle it back together. But this has taken the rivalry that they've had, and I always joke with Washington fans, you can't have two rivals in Oregon, Washington State. You got to pick one. But I think Washington's rival is clearly Oregon in this case. Washington State has hatred for one school and one school only, and it's the University of Washington. And I think the way Oregon, whatever they're saying publicly, I think that's foolish. I think you need to take the energy and the emotion of a game like this, and you need to speak it out in the universe. I think Washington State needs to do the same. They need to play with their hair on fire, with a lot of emotion. They need to treat this like their championship game because they don't really have one. And if they come out and they start holding Rogers early, and this is an ugly, sloppy game, I think Washington State has a chance. I think this over-under is ridiculous. It's sitting at 56. Neither of these offense look like they're going to score 56 points over the next 3 weeks. So I look at a game like this. I think it's ugly. I think it's sloppy. I think it's emotional. I play really heavy on the under on this one.
Okay, so what about Will Rogers? Will Rogers has 511 yards on the season, 78.8% completion percentage, and you have Jonah Coleman, who's been blowing it up, rushing the ball. I mean, he had 116 yards on the ground last week, I believe.
Yeah, look at your competition. And I told you this earlier today when you wanted to talk about points per game on offense and points per game on defense. And I said these are very misleading stats early on. And you want to start talking what Michigan's done playing Fresno State and Texas and what their points per game look like. And then you want to bring it over and talk Washington having played Weber State, which pretty much everyone on this podcast can't tell me what state that's even in, and playing Eastern Michigan. So – Weber's
its own state, right?
I think so. Yeah. Right.
Weber State. It's got to be just like Boise.
It's the 51st state. Yeah. That must have happened last week or something. But you have to look at the level of competition. And again, when I go to these games live, I like to see what the quarterbacks are doing, what the routes are being run. It was clear Rodgers didn't know where he wanted to go with the ball. And when he threw the ball, it was because his guy was open because they were playing inferior talent. When you start playing better teams and better schemes and everything, and that first, second read's not there and you're getting itchy, you're getting sacked. You're not completing a 35-yard pass. So until I really see him grasp that offense and see what this team could do, I am not impressed by that team at all.
But in their defense, they're doing what they're supposed to do. Inferior competition, you beat them, and you beat them to the ground, which they've done.
True.
And we'll take it.
But, I mean, at least Oregon, you can hang your hat on the fact, we're going to talk about this later. Say what you want. Boise State's a pretty darn good football team. I'm not going to sit here and say that win is worrisome in any way, shape, or form. I think Boise State's going to be hyper competitive this year, and they could make it to the playoff and give a 5 seed a scare, to be honest with you. Washington doesn't have that on their resume. They don't have that level of competition, and they've looked very pedestrian. So a little more optimism for Oregon at this point.
Little note, Washington State has 2 ex-Oregon players on there, former Oregon players. One of them's actually was a decent player for Oregon, is Chris Hudson, and then Keith Brown's on that team as well.
Interesting.
For Washington State. And I agree, I would go the under. I just don't see those teams getting above 56 combined. I don't see it.
I don't either. How about you, B? You haven't made your pick yet. We have. What about you?
What do we got? You got to give us the stats, man. What's the over/under? What's the point spread again?
Well, Washington's -5 currently. They started at -8.5. You've seen that drop to -5 throughout this week. Over/under stayed pretty consistent and is currently sitting at 56.
I'm gonna lay the points. Give me Washington.
Wow. All right.
Hey, but Chris wanted to point out here that Boise State-Oregon rivalry runs deep.
It
does. Well, they got that first win against Boise. That matters.
They did.
That's what counts now. Also, breaking news. Tua's in concussion protocol. Oh,
wow! That's not a shock at all.
No,
nasty.
I'm a Dolphins fan, so that's definitely not a shock.
That might be a career ender.
Well, he's had some pretty bad.
He honestly should have had a career ender 2 years ago. I mean, he had a great season.
I thought the same. That crossed my mind when I saw it 2 years ago. I was like, man, he might be out. That was a nasty hit. I didn't think he was coming back from that. Damn it. That's awful.
I don't
I
think
hate
he
to
should
see
have,
that.
but
No,
I
no,
do, because this is the stuff that leads to CTE when you keep getting these.
Yeah.
It leads to junior sale level stuff that is just sad.
Yeah.
And you've made your money. It's time to get out. He's got the
your body
money. He's got
doesn't
that
work.
bankroll. Yeah.
If your body's not working, you gotta walk away while you still have it. I think, Chris Miller once had that problem. He kept coming back, and it took him, and I know him because he went to school across town from me. And he graduated a year ahead of me. It took him about 10 years to get everything right again after he finished playing football because of all the concussions he took.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah,
and that's he's my age, so he's getting to a point where in a couple of years, when he hits 60, he might start having some of that early onset stuff that you worry about when you've got that many concussions. He's done a really good job in the last 10 years, and I'm proud of what he's been able to accomplish after some. He struggled at times, and I saw it he bought a truck from a place I worked, and he didn't even know how to figure out what size his tires were.
Wow.
He's better now. He's a lot better. So I don't want to see that happen to Tua. I've seen him a few times in Hawaii, and it's just not worth it, man. It's a game, and if you've got the money, it's time to take something up.
Yep, time to hang it up.
I agree.
Well, we got another West Coaster. We're gonna get into this one too. So we got the Big Ten game of the week. It was up for it, but we went to the Oregon State for the Midwest CornFest game of the week, but we got Indiana at UCLA. This is huge. UCLA's very first Big Ten game. It's official now, boys. It is time to let those nuts drop and don't hold them up there anymore. It's big boy ball. You got to become men. So Indiana, surprisingly, 2-0 and just going off offensively. UCLA had that, what everyone desires, week 2 bye week. Man, they scheduled them great there. Holy cow. What? I mean, they barely beat Hawaii, and then they get a bye week to prepare for Indiana, of all teams, too. That schedule's
and I believe they're
daunting.
underdogs, right?
And they are underdogs, right, Matt? What do you got, Matt?
Yeah, Indiana going to the Rose Bowl. First time I think we've ever said that in our lives. Are sitting at -3 in this game.
The only way they're getting there.
The only way they're getting there is playing UCLA in the regular season. Yeah. That line has not changed because nobody cares about this game or is betting on it. The over-under started at 48.5. It's at 46. I mean, again, early on in the season, I like to see who you've played and kind of the style and how you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
I got no special insight for you. These are two terrible bottom-of-the-barrel Big Ten teams. I think this is a dumpster fire. I picked the under just because I want nothing to do with this game. Sorry, that's best insight I got for you.
So Indiana's averaging 54 points a game, probably also something that we've never said before. And like I said, that bye week, wow, the Big Ten couldn't have screwed UCLA anymore. First of all, with their schedule. Second of all, with a bye week on the second game of the season. I just don't understand why that's even possible. Why would you want that? Why is it needed?
Again, not that I'm here to promote or support Michigan football in any way, but I'm going to keep using them in this comparison because I think they've had the toughest schedule year to date. Indiana's played FIU, which has an over-under at 5.5, which is pretty pathetic. And then they played Western Illinois.
What's Western Illinois over-under? Did they even do that?
No.
They were 0-25 until they played Indiana. Now they're 0-26 in their last 26 games.
There you go. I mean, so that's where, again, 54 points a game. Let's put some context around this a little bit. UCLA, again, it's actually never super fun to travel to Hawaii and play. I know that sounds pretty glamorous. Even from LA, you're still talking a 4.5-hour flight just to get there. You're kind of in the ooh and ah of the Hawaiian environment, and they play a lot tougher at home than they do when they have to travel to the continental U.S. So not making any excuses. Hawaii's over-unders at 5.5 too. But again, if you're just breaking down what these two teams have done early on, they have played absolutely terrible opponents. Not really a whole lot to read here. I just see a very ugly, sloppy game.
Anyone's game to me.
I would go the under 2 here because I'm looking at the scores, and 77 of those that average 4.5 is in one game against Western Illinois. They only scored 31 against FIU. So I don't know that, I think Cignetti's a better coach than what they've had, but I don't know. I don't see that offense exploding for a ton of points against UCLA.
No, and with Eric Bellamy there, Bieniemy there, that defense is probably going to slow down the Hoosiers. And Indiana's defense hasn't been challenged at all, so I look for Ethan Garbers to kind of shake the dust off from game one and produce like he did in the bowl game last year. So I'm going to lean towards UCLA in this one.
Really? You want those points? All right. I got you.
All right. Well, Scott, what did you say you were taking on this?
I'm going the under.
Going under also? All right.
Yep.
I think that's a good pick. I could get on board with that. Should I change my answer? No, I'm keeping it. Give me UCLA.
Hey,
all right, boys.
I might be able to go under and still pick UCLA because I do think UCLA has a little bit better talent, but I'm going to go with the under. I could see them winning this game outright.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's all our West Coast games for you, Scott. I appreciate you coming in, joining us, and like always, giving us a little Duck insight. Anything else from the Duck side of things you'd like to say before we let you get out of here?
No, I think everything we covered it pretty well. I'm going to be interested to see and talk to you guys next week, see how this one turns out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to be a great game. You take care. Join us again anytime, man.
All right, guys.
Thank you,
Have a
Scott.
good night.
All right.
Yep.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
All right. Always cool. Always cool to get Scott on here, man. He's a good guy. Brings good insight. But, hey, we didn't get a chance to say it yet. You want to give your little spiel? I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't necessarily want to hear it, but if you got to say it, you got to say it.
No. You got to take care of your housekeeping before you can get onto the fun stuff. So let's get it knocked out before we pay some bills. The Big Ten backers want to clearly state that all aspects of our betting segment or any discussions around gambling are for entertainment purposes only. Betting should only take place in states where gambling has been legalized. If you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER or utilize the local resources in your area. Most of these services are free of charge and available 24 hours a day. Please budget accordingly and stick to a strict plan when legally gambling. Do not chase losses by betting on games or props originally not part of your plan, and do not exceed pre-planned budgets. Thank you and good luck.
You know, we could record that, but I like to make you read that every time because it's.
I asked you 3 weeks ago to record it and then play it live, and you're like, "Yeah, we can do it for sure." And now I think you're messing with me.
It's just more fun watching you read. It's getting hot in here, and you need to cool down because I'm making you read that. So we're gonna get it with some Icy Breeze.
Icy
baby.
Breeze. Icy Breeze is the world's first portable.
Here we go. Let's
Icy
try that
Breeze
again.
is the world's first portable air conditioner and cooler. A premium ice cooler that doubles as an eco-friendly portable air conditioner. This is not a swamp cooler just blowing air across ice. Over 60 parts and components allow Icy Breeze to achieve what no other product in the world can do. The secret behind the Icy Breeze is an innovative design that circulates chilled ice water through a heat exchanger in the lid, replacing the Freon used in most ACs. Fresh air is drawn from hidden vents in the top of the cooler, pulled across the exchanger, and chilled down to 35 degrees cooler than the outside air. A 3-speed fan control delivers Icy Breeze's dry, cold air up to 25 miles per hour, just like a car AC. And a stay-put flex hose directs the breeze in any direction. Wherever you need it, Icy Breeze helps you beat the heat.
Beat the heat with Icy Breeze. Hey, we got another big game we got going on. Alabama is traveling north of the Mason-Dixon, heading into Yankee country to take on them Badgers at Wisconsin. What do you got on this one, buddy?
First off, I want to just applaud Alabama for actually playing a football game outside of the South. Congratulations. It took you how many years with Nick Saban to never venture anywhere outside the South unless it was a national championship game. So tip your cap to them for finally doing that. And this one, we're going to kind of see a theme here. And we talked about it again early on, laying the foundation of who have you played the first 2 weeks, not overreacting to things. This is the overreaction line spread change of the week by far. You saw the line start early on at -8.5. You have seen that jump to -16 in favor of Alabama. The over-under started at 51.5. You've seen that drop to 49.5. But really going back to that spread, you've seen a lot of the sharps, a lot of the money really early on trying to gobble up some of those single-digit spreads. Even as they're getting up to 13, 14, you're seeing that number go higher. In fact, 89% of the cash has been rolling to the spread in favor of Alabama. You've seen 74% of the cash going to the under. And this is, again, a little bit of an overreaction. I think that spread was a really bad spread. Vegas rarely makes mistakes, but I think it was an overreaction to the game against USF. That game was very tight going into the fourth quarter. Alabama kind of blew away a little bit at the end. This one, to me, when you're looking at Wisconsin and what they've done the first two games, this is the Wisconsin that we're used to. Really no offense. Defense isn't where I want it to be. I think Alabama got their scare. They got it out of the way. I see Alabama handling this easy. Lay the points. Give me the Tide. How about you?
Well, this is a huge game. And it was one that we wanted to do. Again, there was another game that we could have done for the Midwest CornFest Game of the Week. But, man, I think this is maybe over by halftime. I do not see Wisconsin having the Jimmies and the Joes to keep up against Bama. Maybe if they had the competition, but they're struggling to beat Western Michigan, South Dakota. They beat each of those teams by 14 points. If they were hammering people, maybe we'd be talking a little bit differently, but this team screams average. It's one of those butterface. They look good from far away, but you turn around and watch out. Bama beat their cupcakes bad, 63-0, and last week 42-16. They scored like 20 points in the last 5 minutes, but they're taking care of business, man. And to add insult to injury, Wisconsin will be out without senior linebacker Jake Chaney, second in tackles last year. He got a targeting penalty and will be out the first half against Bama, where they're going to need him the most. Can Ches Malusi and Tyler Van Dyke, every lesbian's favorite quarterback, they're going to have to be out of this world. In order to make something like that, they're going to just have to play out of their damn minds, right? I don't see anything happening. Give me Alabama and give me those points.
Absolutely. And I think, too, if this was a night game at Camp Randall, you and I have experienced that. It is a very intense environment. It's a 11 a.m. kickoff. So that's certainly something. And the second point with Alabama, these actually weren't as big of cupcakes as they look. Both the Western Kentucky and South Florida have over-under win projections this year of 7.5. You can't say that about Wisconsin's schedule. So Alabama took care of business. I see a full throttling here. I would be shocked if it's even remotely close.
Oh, I don't see it being close even at halftime. It's just going to get worse after that. And Christian Avoy's like, hey, Nebraska better not pull a Notre Dame this week. I don't see Nebraska doing that. I don't see Matt Rule doing that. I'm drinking that Rule-Aid. In fact, most of my Rule-Aid's gone. I got to work on my second glass.
And with that, I'm going to transition to our next game. You've got the number 20 Arizona Wildcats at 2-0, traveling to Manhattan to take on the number 14 seed ranked, I should say, Kansas State Wildcats. This spread started at -7.5. You've only seen it drop slightly to -7. Over under here started at 56.5 and has jumped up to 59.5. You're seeing about 64% of the cash flowing to Arizona, actually. And
did you say 65%?
64% flowing to Arizona
64%.
in terms of cash. And what Vegas loves to see, you're seeing exactly 50-50 split on the cash on the over-under. And these numbers are more recent, right? So when you see a line jump and then you say, well, 50-50 cash, it probably got pretty high up there. But with a score like 59.5, you got to think 31-28 type game, that's 59. So you think of very common scores and where these over-unders sit. So you have that back and forth with that hook on there. But with that being said, again, I like to break down these schedules. Arizona started week 1 against New Mexico. New Mexico has an over-under win projection of 2.5 this year. So an atrocious FBS team. And in week 2, you play Northern Arizona. You have no read on that whatsoever. Kansas State played an FCS school week 1, throw it out the window. But they went to Baton Rouge, they went to Tulane, and played a really competitive Tulane team. They won that game, and I think they're battle-tested with that. So as a result of that, I say Tulane. At Tulane. Yes, so I want to lay the points here. Give me the Wildcats. How about you?
Yeah, man, this is our big-ass dump truck game of the week. This is a big game. It's a Friday night game. Noah Fafita versus Avery Johnson, the man who scared off Will Howard to Ohio State, man. All right, he had to leave because the man was behind him. It's a quarterback battle in the making. Kansas State struggled to upend Tulane like you just talked about just a week ago. Arizona has an electric deep ball. Fafita to McMillan all day long. It's been instrumental in taking Arizona to a huge season last year. I think they had 10 wins. They were 10-3 last year, right? Dual threat quarterback battle. And the other, the defense is going to have to play through the air. So, because that Arizona battle is battle tested, they throw it through not battle tested, but they're throwing the deep ball well, and whoever is going to extend plays on the ground, because these both are quarterbacks that can run, they're quarterbacks that can pass. So I see who can make the difference on the ground and through the air, and kind of stretch out that defense is going to be the one to win the game. Like you said, that Tulane team is a decent team, so I got Kansas State too.
Yeah. And this is, again, I think I told you early on, don't think of what the team was last year and bring it into this season. It's not the same teams in any way, shape, or form. And I think Jed Fish had his team really rolling down there last year at Arizona. Mm-hmm. I understand the quarterback wide receiver is still there. Different coach, different scheme, different everything. So until Arizona can prove that they're still clicking on all cylinders like they were under Coach Fish, I think Kansas State has been more battle tested. So I like that pick there.
Yeah, going on an away game anytime, even though it's Tulane. But Tulane's had success the last 3 years. They've been a decent team.
Very decent, to the point where some have wondered what they could do, being the group of 6 bowl team. So
sure. We skipped over one that I think that we need to go back and change it from a quickie to a actual game to talk about. I'm gonna throw a little audible at you. Notre Dame and Purdue. Because of last week and being an in-state rivalry, we got to talk about these Boilermakers and what they can do against these Golden Domers, man.
I mean, it's not like I spend all day working on the spreadsheet or anything, right? But
just audible. You're good.
I'm good. I'm good.
Reroute.
I'm good. You got to call that audible when the scheme changes.
After an embarrassing loss to Northern Illinois has got to be one that might make it from the group of 5, right? Because of that win. Number 5 on the road. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But, man, can they withstand a trip to West Lafayette? West Lafayette's not an easy place to play when they're rough and rowdy. And Hudson Card was going off, man. He was like 98% passing in the last game. And Notre Dame's a team that's already on his knees. I think Hudson Card can facialize him.
Hudson Card played the Sycamores of Indiana State. So take your stats and throw them out the window. I don't care. This one is interesting and again, I look to Vegas oftentimes when I start to see where's the pulse, where's the money going, just because I think Vegas really has a grasp on most college football games. And this one started at minus 12.5. which on the surface just seems pretty low to begin with. You've since seen that drop to minus 9.5. It was actually minus 10 this morning. You've seen it drop a half a point again today. So you're only seeing about 52% of the cash going to Notre Dame. And this is because Notre Dame is such an enigma. If you just look at the tenure of Coach Freeman, they've had multiple back-to-back losses. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I want to say when they lost to Ohio State the following week, they lost to Marshall as well. Now, I'm not saying Ohio State in comparison here, but the idea, the concept of Coach Freeman losing back-to-back games, not out of the realm of possibility. He's done it before. Purdue, I just don't know what you're getting from this Purdue team. Again, we see nothing in week 1 against Indiana State. You have an over-under at 4.5. That tells me a lot of what I need to know. Tougher schedule, I get it. But I look at that, and then I look at the over-under at 45.5, where Notre Dame, played a really good team in week 1, went down to College Station and won, definitely tripped and fell, knocked themselves pretty much out of the playoffs in week 2. This is a game where maybe it's kind of a get-right game, get your defense aligned. I don't really like it, so I'd probably go with the under here. But what are your thoughts?
What was the over-under again?
45.5, and it stayed consistent all week.
45. Yeah, that's tough. Because that's pretty low anyway. But with Notre Dame and their defense, the way they play, I would venture to go into the under too. But what I want to ask you, I'm going to go under. Let's lock that up. What I want to ask you is, does Notre Dame have a chance at making the playoffs? They're not in a conference, so this is where the conference would help you. You know, when you're independent like this, you have to have a way to get in. One loss to a MAC team, that's got to take you out of the playoffs. When you don't have anyone else on your schedule. And honestly, unless things get better, I don't see them going undefeated the rest of the way.
Agree, and I think you hit on all the key points there. I don't think the schedule is favorable. I think if it was one of those Notre Dame years where they were chocked full of really highly touted ranked teams, you have a shot. And taking a broader step back, the ACC is the weakest of the Power Four right now by far. So not only that, but the conference that you are quasi-aligned to, you're already playing the weakest of the four there. And the fact is, nobody wants to do this Notre Dame team any favors. They don't like that they're independent. And they were never going to get a top 4 seed anyways. They were always going to be best at fifth, even if they went 12-0. So the odds there are highly unlikely. They would have to continue to elevate their play, dominate every opponent over the next 10 weeks, and have that arrow pointing so far up that the committee says, yeah, we're going to take you over a 3-loss SEC, a 3-loss Big Ten team. That's the only way I can see that happening.
Okay. Well, moving right along, no more Notre Dame, Purdue. Boiler up, baby. I want to see, I could see Purdue knocking them off. I could see it happen. I could see them rushing the field and in West Lafayette, because it's a tough place to play. You've seen other teams go down there. We've seen Ohio State go down there when they're rated number 2. And believe me, that crowd gets rowdy. It gets rowdy in West Lafayette, man. They got a great student section. Fun place to watch a game. But we got to move right along. Boston College and Missouri, baby. Were you ready for this one, or did I throw you another curveball?
No, I was ready for that one. I appreciate sticking to the script. And so Boston College traveling to Columbia to play Missouri. The spread was minus 16.5 in favor of Missouri. It has stayed there all week. Same with the over-under in terms of staying consistent all week. It started at 54. It has stayed at 54. And this is a little bit of when you're looking at Boston College, right? Obviously have that big week 1 win. Week 2, they play Duquesne. Great story during March Madness, irrelevant during the football season. And then you have Missouri, who really hasn't played anybody. They played Murray State and they played Buffalo. But if you actually look at both those games, maybe not as much points as you would like to see from this Missouri team. Granted, 51-0 and 38-0, nothing to scoff at. But in college football, really racking up those points and those yards and the offense, especially early on, is something you pretty typically see from really good teams. So the 6th seed next to Missouri is a little curious. And with Boston College, I love Castellanos, but we talked about this earlier with the fact he's not a very accurate quarterback. He's a guy that's going to use his legs a lot. He's going to get first downs. He's going to hit college open wide receivers, which any halfway decent quarterback should be able to do. So I really see some movement there, but I like Missouri's defense. I think they're playing at a high level. I look at it again, you're going to see a trend here, but I actually like the under at 54. How about you?
Well, I think what's really happening with Boston College is they're getting that Florida State bump, where Florida State was just really, really overrated to start the beginning of the year. Obviously, we're seeing that they're trash. I don't think they're going to win that many games this year. I don't even know if they do another over-under for win total for Florida State, but I'm assuming that it's not very good at this point.
No.
The thing about Missouri, their passing attack is what they really need. They got Luther Burden, they got Theo Wise, and those are both probable with injuries, so they might not play against this Bill O'Brien team. If they do play, I don't think Bill O'Brien has the answers for them. They're just, the Jimmies and Joes are too much for the story of Boston College. Missouri big in this one. Big. And then the over-under, did you take the over-under?
I took the under.
You took the under at under 54?
Correct.
So do you think Boston College gets some points on the board since no one's ever scored on Missouri?
Yeah, I do. And I could see, something around like a 34-14, 34-17 type game where you're in the 45-48 range. I do think Missouri's better. I think you made a valid point about the bump of Boston College having beat Florida State. To me, that's not a ranked team. I don't care about your preseason rankings or early on rankings.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's BS. Yeah.
No, I mean, Florida State could be 6-3, 9 games, 10 weeks into the season and not be ranked at all. And that's an unranked team you beat as far as I'm concerned. So I completely agree with those points. I think Missouri's solid. I don't know if I'd have them at 6 at this point in time, but I'm going to throw the rankings to the side here. I definitely see where you're seeing Missouri laying the points and covering.
I got it, man. Missouri laying the points.
All right. Well, let's move on to a game you kind of hinted to it earlier. Number 16, LSU,
Boom.
1-1, traveling to take on the Gamecocks of South Carolina at 2-0. Another spread you've seen stay pretty consistent all week at -7. Over under started at 52. You have seen that drop to 48.5. And again, this is where I think we got to shake the cobwebs off of the LSU team from last year, right? Scoring at will, giving up points quite a bit at will as well, too. And there were trends last year with USC and LSU, always scoring a ton of points, always taking the over. That was fun. Different look and feel to this LSU team this year. South Carolina, I don't really know why this game is -7. Maybe it's a night game. It's on the road. It's an SEC game, first one of the year. A lot of unknown variables with these two teams. And again, you're seeing this trend as I start to get a feel or work through who these teams really are as they get to week 3 and week 4 and start playing actual conference opponents, real opponents. And because of that, I look at this game and I think sloppy, go with the under. How about you?
You know how bad I like the Cox, man. But
I do.
LSU is going to send the Cox out of this game limp and beaten. Garrett Nussmeier has 610 yards on the season, 75% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns to 1 interception. You know he's going to be able to handle the Cox despite their defensive penetration. Williams-Brice Stadium's going to be rocking, but LSU's air raid is just going to be too much. Give me LSU to cover that point spread.
All right. I got you down for it.
Give me Nussmeier, baby.
Said no one ever.
Brad, what's up, man? Brad, the Hawkaholics podcast, man, is in the house.
Nice. All right. Looks like we lost Beef here for a second. I'll have to make the picks on my own here. Must have clicked off of something. But definitely want to keep the comments rolling, everybody, as we continue to kind of navigate the schedule here. And welcome
Here we
back.
go. Hey, man, I always got to, throw you off a little bit. A little curveball there for you.
I kept talking, man. Don't worry about me.
You covered it. Here we go.
Yeah.
Well, are we ready for it?
Oh, we're ready for it. Let's roll.
We are ready. We're going to get into them quickies.
Yes, we are.
It's going to be rapid fire.
All right, first one. We have the Wolves of Arkansas State traveling to the Big House to take on the number 17 Wolverines. Line started at -24.5, seeing it drop slightly to 23.5. You're seeing the over-under currently sit at 47.5. And quite honestly, until Michigan can figure out what they're doing on offense, their schemes, their concepts, I think their defense is one of the best in the country. I would take the under. How about you?
I'm gonna say that Arkansas State covers.
All right. No bias there?
Maybe some bias.
I'm not judging. I'm proud of you. All right.
I just don't see, they didn't play well against Fresno State. They played terrible against Texas. I don't think that this team has a whole lot yet.
They don't. They're figuring it out. But let's be real. Texas is a legit playoff national championship contender. They showed
Absolutely.
it. They proved it. So what? You got beat by a really, really good team. I'm not going to hold that against you early on. But moving on to our next one, you got the Chippewas of Central Michigan at 1-1, traveling to Champaign to take on the Illini. The line is sitting at minus 18.5, and you're seeing an over-under at 49.5, which has dropped 3.5 points over the week. You're seeing a lot of the cash flowing to the under here. You saw what happened last week with Illinois and Kansas. Really good win for them. One of the slowest charging the fields I've ever seen in my life by that fan base. Really got stepped up. To be fair, they're not
like we don't really know how to do this. So
I know.
Let's just walk down there.
Translate what you do in basketball sometimes, 20 years ago and bring it onto the football field. But with that being said, I think I like to follow the money on this one. Give me the under. How about you?
Who did Central Michigan lose to? Who did Chippewas play? They played someone good.
You know what, man? You can only throw me so many curveballs in the show before I just start to
I'm trying to remember. I think it was last week.
They lost to FIU, who was dominated by Indiana in week 1.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, that changes things. So I thought Illinois might have a letdown game, but that's pretty damn bad. So lay the points.
Makes sense. All right, moving on. We have the Wolfpack in Nevada at 1-2 because they played week 0 against SMU. Taking on Minnesota. We're seeing the line that has jumped and is now currently sitting at 17.5. Has jumped 3 points this week. Over-under is at 43. And this is one where you start to look at Nevada a little bit, and I know their over-under total for the year wins was very mediocre. They've really struggled the last few years as a program, but they've been really competitive in the games they played this year. And Minnesota, I just never know what you're going to get from this Minnesota team. I'm keep waiting for
that's tough.
Around. With that being said, I will take those 17.5 with that nice hook. Give me the Wolfpack. How about you?
Ooh, I'm gonna go 17.5. It started at 14.5.
Yep, and has moved up.
I'm going to go the over.
Over? In a Minnesota football game? This isn't the Vikings. This is the Gophers.
I think it's against Nevada, who's 1-2.
1-2, and have played pretty competitive this year. So, all right, I got you at the over. And we're going to move on to
Brosner, man. He's going to start bringing it. He's ready for 1A ball, like big boy ball, FCS, not FBS, sorry, not FCS, where he was the king. He's ready for big boy ball. I think he brings it. The speed has finally he's finally caught up to the speed. Let's go.
In week 3, all right.
Yeah.
Good to know. Well, let's move on where the Trojans of Troy, not USC, of Troy, are traveling to take on the Iowa Hawkeyes. You've seen this.
Oh, man. Look at that over-under.
You've seen it stay consistent at 22.5. By the way, I do want to remind everybody, depending on the sports book you were at last week, a lot of them kind of closed at 36. That under covered last week, Iowa State, until that last second field goal pushed it to the over at 20-19.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So you would have pushed at a lot of at 36, and you lost it on that last second field goal just like Iowa did. And to Beef's point, they have now jumped the over-under up to 39. They're saying, okay, we think Iowa games can get up to 39 points. We've seen it happen. and honestly, Troy, they've had some good years, but this is not one of them. That is a terrible, terrible team this year. Iowa, I'm sorry. I told you all last week, I don't believe anything about Iowa in terms of offense. With that being said, I think they could score 31, 35. It's a miracle there. Troy may get 3 on that defense. Give me the under. How about you?
Over. Easy.
Over and Iowa and easy are words that do not go together.
Hey, man, I got this one. I'm going to hit on this.
I'm actually going to make a note of that. I got this one.
Extra confident. Extra confident.
All right, moving on to the Terrapins of Maryland, coming off a tough loss to Michigan State last week at 1-1, traveling to Charlottesville to take on Virginia. You've seen Maryland at -3, so a road favorite here. and an over-under sitting at 57. That was a surprisingly good game last week, that Maryland-Michigan State game. For those that didn't get a chance to see it, I thought it was pretty competitive. Maryland can certainly score some points. Virginia can do about the same, so I like the over here. How about you?
Maryland versus this is tough. You're going the over.
Yeah, 60% of the cash going to over. You got about 71% of the cash going to the spread on Maryland. I feel bad for you because you're coming off two straight weeks of 6 and 10, so I'll give you a little extra here.
Who did Virginia beat? Some nobodies, didn't they?
I think there's a military academy down there, right? Yeah, the Virginia Military Academy. I'm not really sure, but I'm buying time while you keep talking.
Let's see. I'll
give you okay.
Michigan State.
No, they beat Richmond, and then they beat Wake Forest at Wake Forest. That's who Virginia has played this year.
Yeah, and I don't think Maryland's got it, man. I have to go. I got to do it over or under on this one because I don't know.
That's why I went that way.
Win the game.
Yeah.
And you went ahead and took the over?
I took the over on this one, bucking the trend of the week.
I'm going under.
All right. I like that. All right, moving on to Tulane, 1-1. We talked about them earlier. That tough loss at home against Kansas State last week. They are traveling to Oklahoma to play the 15th-ranked Sooners. The spread started minus 13.5. You've only seen it drop slightly to minus 13. The over-under, though, started at 49.5. You've seen that drop to 46. This is a game where I think Tulane's got some talent, but again, I think when they go up against a pretty good team or a really good team like you saw last week in Kansas State, they just don't have the horses to pull it out. This was a trend with them the last few years, though that USC bowl game aside. I don't like 13 at all. I think if you can really shop around and possibly see more money flowing to Oklahoma, maybe that gets up to 14. I'm a little bit more comfortable there. But because that line is at 13 and because 92% of the cash is flowing to the under, I like the under here. How about you?
Oh man, I'm gonna go with Tulane to cover.
Wow, interesting. And quick note, Oklahoma played Houston last week, and Houston is a terrible, terrible team. That was a 16-12 final score there. So
yeah, with a sack, or yeah, it was a safety, like at the end of the game to get those extra 2 points.
Which is irrelevant. That spread was high double digits, so nowhere close to covering any spread or over-under. But, yeah, I mean, just really mediocre play from Oklahoma. Interesting to see how they come out here against a pretty good opponent.
For sure.
And then moving on, I had to put this in the backyard brawl. Obviously, we're West Virginia Pitt, I'm being from Northeast Ohio, very close to West Virginia, very close to Pitt. This is a very intense rivalry, these two schools. So it is a fun game if you get a chance to watch it. Started out at minus 4.5 in favor of West Virginia. You've seen that drop to -2. However, the over-under is what I want to talk about. Started at 58.5, and you have seen that jump to 64.5. So you've seen a 6-point swing on that over-under. And in West Virginia, I know they got a lot of run because week one, Fox's, big noon kickoff. You had Pat McAfee as a West Virginia alum talking a lot about it. A lot of coverage there. That is not a good football team, to be honest with you. Their over-under win totals at 5.5 on the year. They've certainly showed it. Pitt's an interesting story. They played a really bad team in Penn State in week one, kind of dominated but gave up 24 points. Week two, they traveled to Cincinnati. Not an easy place to play. They won 28-27. But what you're kind of seeing with Pitt is the ability to really put up some points and play offense, and you're not seeing a strong defense there. So with that being said, I actually I was going to go with the over, but then I realized earlier on I'm going to go with common sense. I like Pitt here. How about you?
I like Pitt too. Give me Pitt. I'm with you on that.
This is why I do it ahead of time. And then the last rapid fire here, we have the number 1 Georgia Bulldogs at 2-0 going to Lexington to take on 1-1 Kentucky Wildcats. Spread is currently sitting at -24, been pretty consistent across most books. And you're seeing the over-under pretty consistent at 45 here. This one to me is really straightforward. Give me the Bulldogs.
You got the Bulldogs with the covering that 24 points?
Easy. I don't see anything from Kentucky that tells me they're going to hang with one of the best teams in the country.
What was that score that Kentucky had last week? They lost to South Carolina 31-6. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give me Georgia.
Yeah.
Easy.
That's kind of my rationale. And just for what it's worth, 98% of the cash is flowing to Georgia in the spread right now. So sharps, public, everybody's really bullish on the Bulldogs here in this one.
But what happened to Kentucky, man?
They never
this year.
It's not basketball.
I mean, they were, yeah, but they were a decent SEC team the last couple of years.
I mean that puts you at 7-5. So
yeah,
I mean they're fine. They beat the Vanderbilts. They beat the teams. They beat Tennessee.
They might not beat Vanderbilt this year. Vanderbilt's all right.
Vanderbilt is tough, man. That transfer quarterback they brought in, boy, he gave Virginia Tech fits in week 1. Interesting team there to watch, but who knows? They may appear on our next segment as we are moving on to the BWYP Game of the Week.
I think we got the quickies done about as slowly as we've ever done it before.
Taking our time, man. Enjoy
it's all good. It's all good. You got the burns when you pee. These games are so bad, it feels like you're burning when you pee to pick this one. That bad. And I always get to pick them for some reason.
Because we want to hear you elaborate on all these teams and break it down for us. But
break down the big time games. Here we go.
And unfortunately, we didn't get a chance early on, obviously, with having Scott on to kind of break down the standings and everything. But I will break down what happened last week when you took Central Michigan at -6.5 against FIU, again, a team that got throttled by Indiana in week 1. FIU won 52-21. So not only did they get that +6.5, but they tacked on 31 on top of it. So you are now sitting at 1-1. All right. I think I got a pretty good one here. I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but you have the Owls of Rice sitting at 1-1, traveling to take on the Cougars of Houston at 0-2. This line is sitting at, and I thought I'd go a little bit deeper here just because, again, you don't know the situation well. The line started at -5.5 in favor of Houston. You've seen it drop to -4. Over-under started at 42.5. It is now at 44. But I do want to let you know these are two really, really challenging college football teams. So where are you going?
It's hard to go with Rice. That is just these are both Texas teams, huh?
That is correct.
This is in Huntsville, Texas.
No, that's where Sam Houston State is.
Oh, okay.
That's because that was going to be. It was going to be Sam Houston State versus Hawaii. My bad.
That would have been a better Burns when you pee, I think. Wow. All right.
I want to save Hawaii for later in the season, and I tip my cap to playing UCLA tough in week 1. So I'm going to give.
That's true. All right.
Yeah.
Give them a break there. They're not that bad if they're playing UCLA close. Who did Houston lose to? Can you give me any?
Oklahoma for sure.
Yeah. And that was last week?
That was last week, correct.
And Houston played them tough.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Give me Houston. Give me Houston to cover.
Is it because of what they did last week?
Absolutely.
All right, man. I was hoping for some more insight. They lost to UNLV in week 1. So
and Rice obviously played no one for their win.
I'm not even gonna look that one up. I got you down. We're gonna
give me Houston.
We're gonna roll.
That's all I need. If they can play OU tough, they can play Rice and beat them by 4 points.
Time will tell. All right, why don't you kick us off to the last
Why don't you just put me at 2-1? All right.
No. I will not.
Just go ahead and mark that down now. Houston's got this. 4 points. I'm going to actually watch that game now.
I mean, again, this is first off, that is the whole point of gambling is to watch games like these. That's why we're talking about them, because when it's on the CBS Sportsnet or the CW and you got nothing else to watch, it's nice to have a little action on it. Please gamble responsibly. But I do want to point out, with a record of 12-20 on the year, confidence meter is a little high still for you. So we'll see.
That's all right. I always come back strong at the end of the season. I went down big time about the middle of the season last year and pulled right back. I just got to get to know who these teams are. And like everyone else, the beginning of the season's just hogwash, man. Overrated people, underrated people everywhere. So let's get into this. We got to know this playoff breakdown. A lot of people don't really know how it's set up. You got the top 4 conferences getting a bye. All right. And then you have the 5th conference takes another place. It could be anywhere, wherever they seed them. All right. The highest rated 5th conference gets in no matter what. So that means a group of 5 is getting in. So we need to know where the playoff projections are for these group of 5 teams. You got that for us?
Absolutely.
Group of 5 playoff projections, if I could talk. What do we got?
We talked about weaving these in too, because we wanted to make sure the fan base starts acknowledging, hey, one of these teams or a group of 6 type team is going to make
a playoff team. Yeah,
they are. They are absolutely. It's not an opinion. It's a statement of fact. One of them has to be in the playoff, and a pretty high probability that they could play a Big Ten or an SEC school. So this is a team we want to kind of keep on the radar throughout the season, because it could become middle of December and they're now sitting as a 12 seed playing a 5 seed. It'd be nice to have some intel on where they've been, what's going on with them. Absolutely. I actually want to start out with the fact, obviously the big question was, okay, Northern Illinois, right? You beat a top 5 team on the road as a MAC school. Really powerful resume builder. And if you ask yourself, okay, Northern Illinois runs the table, they go 13-0, they win the MAC, even maybe one trip up here and there. That's a pretty powerful resume, right?
Absolutely.
Well, before that game, they were 80-1 odds, so 8,000 to 1 basically, to make the playoffs. After that game, they're 80-1 odds. It did not change. Now,
really?
Yes, it did not
still
change. Now, I was curious about this, so talked to a few people, read a few things, tried to get some intel, and the consensus was these odds take a lot to change, that they don't change quickly unless you start seeing a ton of money flowing to those. But at least earlier in the week, you were not seeing a ton of money flowing to Northern Illinois. So that one actually stayed rather consistent.
Wow.
And to kind of put that in, so now you're looking at these top 5 here, and I'm ranking them in order of most likely based on betting odds to least. You have Liberty at number 1 at plus 340. Number 2 is Boise State at plus 360. Memphis at 3rd at plus 550. Texas State, who is currently on right now.
What's the score?
Arizona State. Last I looked, it was 31-28 Arizona State, but that is a tough game. They are sitting at 4th at plus 800. And number 5, even with a loss, you're seeing Tulane at plus 1100. So what
it's 31-28 with 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
Arizona State's on top.
And Liberty kind of looks like the most obvious one. If you really go to their schedule and break it down, it is an absolute garbage schedule. So they're kind of saying this 13-0 Liberty team, right? They might just get in because of the numbers associated, the win-loss there. But I think when you're seeing plus 360 with Boise State, already got a loss on their schedule. You got Memphis at 550, but guess what? Memphis plays Florida State this week. So that does not do them any favors. You beat Florida State, that's an 0-3 team.
Okay.
You lose to Florida State, that's not a great loss either.
You're out. Yeah.
Texas State has to beat Arizona State here, as Arizona State's got the ball and they're driving. So this one's not looking ideal for Texas State. They may have a shot. And then Tulane, let's be honest, you have to have beaten Kansas State or Oklahoma. to have
One
a
of the
shot.
two, yeah.
These 2 losses, albeit against good teams, it's not going to do you any justice. Obviously, what happened last week, Tulane has to win this game really to stay relevant in the playoff picture. But what are your initial thoughts of these?
It's just crazy that Liberty gets so much freedom for a shitty schedule, where I think Boise State's got to be the team that gets in just the way they played Oregon and their willingness to get the schedule in. I think, especially with this group of 5, you got to judge how they've done against competition. You can't judge someone that goes undefeated in a shit for conference.
I agree. And you're really hoping that the committee looks at all the criteria they looked at in previous years when they were trying to pick the 4 best teams, strength of schedule, how are you playing in these games, and all these other factors. And I think you and I can both agree that if you just stop the season right now and you put Boise State as the 12th seed, whoever you want as the 5th seed, I don't care, pick a team.
It's going to be more competitive than any other team.
Absolutely.
With Boise State right now.
Liberty showed us what they do when they play against the big boys in the Fiesta Bowl last year, and that was an absolute disaster. Memphis can play. Memphis can hang. You know, you do want to see that Florida State win. I understand that's a down team, but that's still a talented team. So you really want to see Minnesota or Memphis do that. And Texas State's officially lost here. So
damn it.
They've got that. It's going to be a little tricky.
To me, it's Northern Illinois and Boise State. Those are the only 2 that have a shot at it. Obviously it depends on what they do for the rest of the season because they have to win out.
They do. And that's where it's really tricky to go undefeated in the MAC. It's a lot of competitive, a lot of close rivalries in that game. So I really am not bullish on Northern Illinois being able to do that, especially with teams like Toledo and Miami of Ohio in there. I think, to me, the smart play here, at least early on, is Boise State, especially coming off that loss.
Sure.
That's got a lot of talent. If they can figure out and put together, I really see some value there.
All right, like always, this is brought to you by College Football Dogs. So we're going to get a little College Football Dogs commercial here for you. So let's let our network play their commercial. Here we go. After that, we are going to be right back for a quick second.
On the College Football Dogs website, you'll find a main page that features some of our biggest and newest stories. Our conference pages for content related to your favorite team's conference. Our team store, where we have products that are available all year long, as well as gear available for a limited time only. Our podcast page, where you can see when one of the 12-plus College Football Dogs podcasts is streaming live on social media. Our subscription page, where you can join our Discord. If you're interested in becoming a contributor at College Football Dogs, email us at info@collegefootballdogs.com. If you enjoy any College Football Dogs content, we really do appreciate any donations you can make by visiting the donate page on our website or scanning the QR code here.
College Football Dogs, for the fans.
All right, we are back thanks to the College Football Dogs. So, Vegas, Matt, is that game over?
Trying to determine.
Arizona State versus Texas State.
It's pretty close.
Pretty close to over?
About 2-second difference between play clock and time clock. So unless you see some miracle here, it's pretty much over.
Pretty much done for Texas State making the playoffs, so we could take them off of there. Well, I got to ask you a little bit. Did you get to Vegas? You didn't get to Vegas, did you? Not this week, huh? Is this the first week you've missed going to Vegas in a college football season in the last 10 years?
Sometimes, buddy, life just gets in the way of things. So it is.
You still got some sources there, right?
One or two, maybe. One or two. Are you looking for some inside intel here?
Oh yeah, we need all the inside intel we can get. Man, I'm down. I got to get back up there.
I thought you did all right, you know?
Well, on the season, this is going to be the week where I turn it around because I am 12 for 20 on the year. Woo! 37.5%. That is terrible. You're still up over 50%. You're doing well.
Yeah, 7-9 last week. A little bit rough coming off a 10-6 prior, still at 53. Again, when you're looking over the course of the season, we're going to keep reiterating 55 to 60% is really that dream scenario. I think if you can walk away at 57, 58% on a season, you've had a heck of a season in terms of betting. So trying to get up to that point, but these are tough. And I told you earlier, listening to VSiN, which if you're really into gambling, the Vegas Sports Insider Network, I would highly recommend VSiN. Incredible. They're all based out of Vegas. All they do is talk betting, really know what they're talking about. They said that when in terms of NFL in week 2, it is the most overreaction week in the NFL is week 2, because you take everything you saw in 1 week and you think you can translate it to week 2, and that absolutely doesn't apply. Yeah. Take that same philosophy with college football. Look at who teams have played. Look at where things are going. That's where I like to follow the money and the sharps quite a bit. Don't follow tickets. Don't follow that stuff. And don't get into the hype of what you're seeing on ESPN and Fox on these weekly talking head shows. That doesn't apply here. Be smart when you're betting.
Yeah, you got it. Well, as always, the best college football betting show we got anywhere is right here. Big Ten Backers. Matt does Vegas, and he's doing Vegas right now with an above 50% percentage. Doing work, man. I got to catch up to you later on in the season. But Big Ten Backers are out. We love you all. Peace out. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.